Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending another Campus to Career. This is a career community event. We are here to talk to a fabulous panel of government attorneys. And I'm thankful for you guys to take your time out of your Tuesday to be here today. We would like to thank our sponsors for Campus to Career. They are Holland and Knight, Baker McKenzie, and Quarles and Brady. So please remember that this program is being recorded. If you have any questions throughout the program, please feel free to put it in the chat and I will monitor that. And let's see. And then double check the Campus to Career program. We do have a few more programs throughout the week and next week, and I will also place that in the chat. So again, thank you for participating today and taking time out of your afternoon. I'm going to pass it over to Professor Cerniglia to introduce the panelists.
I'm catching it. So welcome, everybody. It's so wonderful to be able to kind of share this virtual space and have these busy practitioners literally take time to give back and show you insight into their career communities. So welcome, everybody. What I'm going to do now is kind of call on each of you to kind of introduce yourselves and how you entered your career community and what you do. And so if we can start off with Janine. Janine, I'd love to start with you. Janine is one of our clinical professors. She actually oversees our local government clinic, but a little bit of insight.
Hello, everyone. I am Janine Williams. I am the Chief Assistant City Attorney for the city of St. Petersburg, and this has been my home away from home since law school for about 22 years now. So my job here is to advise the mayor, the city council, boards and committees, and directors and administrators on all things local government, including policy and a number of other areas of the law that we'll probably get into a little bit later. I am a University of Florida College of Law graduate, and right after law school, I took a gap year, believe it or not, because when I took the bar, I was expecting my first child. And so during that gap year, I researched the types of positions that I might want to go into. And local government seemed to be the best of both worlds for what I was looking for, which was being able to see the tangible effects of what I do and having a quality of life that I can be proud of. And that's how I ended up with the city of St. Petersburg.
Thanks, Janine. Will, I don't know if you can give us some insight into your career.
I started with the Attorney General's office on the Deepwater Horizon oil spill litigation and handled antitrust matters before jumping over to the Department of Transportation, where I handled general civil litigation, like with public records disputes over at the FIU bridge collapse or a federal investigation there. And right now I'm an informal hearing officer. Well, I'm attempting to put together an informal hearing process for the Florida Department of Revenue. I've also briefly handled some tax litigation matters.
Thanks. Alan?
My name is Alan Brock. I am the Rural Affairs Director for the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I came into this role when I chose to attend Stetson to earn my JD. I was making the choice between a Master's of Public Administration or a JD because I knew I was going to likely work in public service, and that is how it's worked out. So in my role, my capacity is I do external affairs. I help coordinate rural outreach for the state of Florida, both as a consumer advocate and as a person advocating on behalf of our agriculture industry.
Thank you. Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen Kachuk. I'm a senior staff attorney with the 13th Judicial Circuit. I'm not a judge, even though my very formal background looks that way. I'm borrowing my judge's bench this afternoon. I exclusively work with our criminal felony judges here in Tampa, so I'm assigned to 3 of them. I do pretty much all of their pretrial research and writing, as well as helping with post-conviction. I've actually been here since I graduated from Stetson in 2014 because of an internship I did while at Stetson, and it really showed me I like the work, and I love it here.
Fantastic. So I always feel like government attorneys are kind of these unsung heroes that are in the background, literally saving our democracy day by day. And we don't necessarily spotlight you the way that you should be. So we always thank you for your service. So I want to talk about this. Many times attorneys don't necessarily choose their career community, but that actually somehow you choose it or it chooses you, right? And so I want to see if this is true for you and what led you to this particular aspect of government work. If you can give us any insight into that, I think it would help the students understand how some of this isn't necessarily planned. Anybody want to start?
I can jump in. So I went to Florida State for undergrad and I majored in social work. I really thought I would be a social worker. After almost graduating, I really started talking to people and everyone was saying, you know, you can make a much longer term difference if you decide to go to law school. So that's why I decided to go to law school. During my time at Stetson, I always thought I would be a prosecutor. I did the clinic and really had a good experience. And then had people mention, you know, writing is a great resource to be able to fall back on. And it's something that maybe a lot of attorneys haven't spent a lot of time kind of sharpening that skill outside of like R&W 1 and 2. So I decided to intern with now Attorney General Ashley Moody. And she really kind of opened my eyes to this career path of working for our judges. And, you know, it's very important and rewarding work. So I've actually just kind of ended up enjoying it way more than I thought. And I guess just kind of as a plug, I'm actually the co-creator of the HCBA government lawyer section, because I also feel like government lawyers don't get maybe all of the credit they deserve. So I think, you know, a lot of people have that experience as, hey, maybe it might be my first job right out of law school. I don't think I'll do it long term. And then you kind of wake up one day like me and you're like, oh, I've done this for almost 8 years. I guess I'm really a government lawyer. So I guess to the extent that was unplanned, that was kind of my path.
Anybody else want to take it from there?
I graduated in 2011, and so the legal hiring environment was pretty dreadful due to the global financial crisis. And my original plan was to work for the feds in DC, but they shut down all the hiring programs. And I'm from Tallahassee originally. And so my options out of law school were Big Law in New York or coming back to Tallahassee. And so and I was talking to people. I'd spent my 2L summer at the AG's office when the oil spill had occurred. And so I was brought back to work on that specifically. I never really had any plans to stay long-term in state government. I know most of the lawyers around me have wished they had started. When you start with state government, you have the option of the investment or pension plan. The investment plan is sold to you because it takes 8 years to vest the pension with the pension. And most people go with the investment plan because they don't plan to spend 8 years with state government. And well, I mean, it's survivorship bias, but a lot of them who are around me right now really wish they had planned to spend those 8 years with government, because that's what has ended up happening. I think that when you're within government, you end up, well, okay, so just for some perspective, I'm in Tallahassee versus, you know, Tampa. And so there's a lot of state government opportunities. And to progress professionally, you usually have to bounce around working in areas you are not prepared or you don't have any experience working in before. And so once you get good at one skill, you basically end up at a different agency doing something else. And your professional development occurs like that. I never had any plan to do tax litigation. It was my lowest grade in law school. And you know, here I am as a tax hearing officer.
Alan, any insight you can share of how you kind of led down
Yeah.
this pathway?
Well, so as I said, I chose, when I was trying to decide between a JD and an MPA, I had taken off some time between undergrad and grad school and worked in government and was trying to figure out a way to be able to move my career a little further forward. And I'd been advised that an advanced degree would be the way to make that happen. I chose a law degree because the law degree gives you more options. It lets you work in government in the same way a master's of public administration and MPA does. But at the same time, it gives you the other options all the other options that a JD offers. I worked for a while as a public defender before I came into this office in this capacity here. I am currently in a role that is kind of the type of work I wanted to do that JD preferred more than actual law. doing external affairs for the government, doing community outreach, helping coordinate and help make sure everyone is getting the services they need. But these things, the career path I'm on is, I'm officially a political appointee. So at the end of my commissioner's term, my job will move forward and I'll have to find the next role. So where I will end up there, I'm not sure. And I could very easily end up in a different capacity in government where it's something different. My internship that I did, I interned at the Public Defender's Office. I also interned with the Small Business Administration in Washington, D.C. with their legal team. And if I end up back there, that is a place that I would fall back into because I have the experience. And I think that you see that with a lot of law degrees. Where you start to get the experience is where you start to define your skills, and that's where you start to move towards with law. So that is a possibility that could definitely move forward if I moved out of this type of work.
Thank you. And Janine, I know that you've already given us insight into kind of why you chose this particular career path, but so I'm going to shift this a little bit because you mentor so many students in the clinical space. And you have really great conversations around how to mentor students who may be changing their mind or considering a career path down local government kind of sphere or government attorney. And I'd love to hear any insight around that, right? How do you mentor students who are considering and opting into this career path? And what is your advice to them?
Get involved as quickly as you can, even as a law student. There are many opportunities to do that. I am what they call a bar junkie. So I'm involved in the ABA and the Florida Bar and the St. Pete Bar Association. But as a law student, you can join most of these organizations for free. And each of them has a government section or a local government section. And there you can meet all sorts of attorneys that practice different areas of the law within the field of government law. And so that's one of the things that I did while I was in law school, which kind of drew me to this work. And outside of that, what I wish I'd known as a law student is that you can design your own research, right? As a law student, you could go to a city council meeting or a state administrative proceeding. Most of them are public. And you could sit there and see what the lawyers do in their roles. And what's really great about government is I think it's one of the most collaborative areas of the law, and local government attorneys are very welcoming, not just to other attorneys, but law students interested in the field. So it only takes a little bit of reach for most local government attorneys, and especially me. So if you do reach out to me, I'm going to reach out back to you and check on you because that's what I do. So be ready when you reach out to us, but we will give you as much information as we can because I love local government law. I like Will, I believe, was thinking, oh, maybe 3 to 5 years here at the city of St. Petersburg, and then I'll journey somewhere else. And as my husband said, I'm hooked, and I became hooked very early on local government law. So get involved before you graduate, before you start to look for a job, if you're in that posture, second L or something like that.
Tell your husband we're very thankful. We're so thankful that you're hooked. Anybody else? Is there a certain kind of aspect that you wish you knew about government attorneys in law school, or advice that you would give to law students as they're choosing this career path?
I'm the membership chair of the Florida Bar Government Lawyer section. And while we don't have a formal mentorship program set up, to the degree anyone has any real interest, if they could reach out to the section, we can pair you up with a practitioner in that area.
Yeah, and so William and I have met via email because of my work with the government lawyer section with the Hillsborough County Bar. You know, I think you really can't push getting involved enough because of how much smaller the circle gets. So this is going to sound rehearsed because I literally just did a presentation on this Friday for government lawyers on, you know, especially the Hillsborough County Bar, right? It's a very large bar. I think we have over 5,000 members now. Even our young lawyer division, which every law student in the Tampa Bay area is welcome to join. I think it's only like $50 a year. It gets you 4 lunches, tons of free stuff with judges, tons of free young lawyer events. Right, that's really daunting to just show up at this membership lunch with probably 800 to 1,000 attorneys in Tampa. every time you get involved into a subgroup, you know, whether that's government lawyers or kind of a bigger picture, young lawyers, it at least makes that room feel smaller. And it's so much easier to approach someone like William and say, oh, hey, I know I've seen you on this email. You do this kind of work. I'd really love to hear more about that. And I will say, probably in a very biased nature, government lawyers, more than any other type of lawyer, truly want to invest their time in young lawyers and law students. I love when my interns have questions and want to come back and want to go to a bar event with me. So don't pass on that opportunity just because you haven't taken the step in the door, because I totally agree with Janine that the baby step you have to take is probably going to get you looped into way more than you thought you would end up agreeing to. But absolutely get involved, take advantage of those law student rates that really every bar organization I think in the area offers. You know, or reach out to someone that you know is involved and say, hey, I'd love to just come shadow this meeting. I know I can plug on June 11th, we're doing a government lawyers lunch at the courthouse, $5. We're going to have some judges. We're going to have a bunch of community members talking about the importance of getting involved in your community. If you go on the bar website, that looks familiar, shoot me an email. Hey, come out and see if there's something that piques your interest, because really we can use law students' help just as much as everyone else. So I think it just helps you the more you can talk to different people doing different kinds of government work to see if it's something you'd be interested in.
Perfect. And I'm also, oh, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the other thing I think about incentivizing working in public service and public service law is I know many of us worry about how to pay back our student loans. I want to put in the plug for the public service loan forgiveness program. 10 years of working, and it seems to be working now too. I have friends who are getting their debt forgiven, but 10 years in public service and when you pay 10% of your income towards your student loans debt, and your debt is forgiven. So that for those of you who have borrowed a lot of money and feel like you have to go into big law to pay that back, you can also pay that back easier in public service and still get that rewarding career that still comes with retirement and vacation times, and be able to predict your life around a schedule. It's a little bit more, not always, because it's still law in the world, but it's easier to predict your life around 9 to 5 in government law than it is sometimes when you're working in some of these other capacities.
I'm so glad you just brought that up. There's a whole bunch of resources on public loan interest forgiveness. Equal Justice Works on their website has a great resources out there for students to understand how that works, and other government lawyers. So thanks for plugging that. So I'm noticing, and I just want to make sure that I'm engaging in the chat and making sure that the students who are online or at the Mann Lounge are able to ask questions, and you can put them in there and we'll make sure to incorporate them in. And you can see how collaborative this group is. They're already volunteering their email addresses and to contact them. Again, really thankful. Okay, so I want to kind of shift a little bit. Y'all have talked about memberships and how important memberships are. And I know both Alan and William are both Florida Bar government law section attorneys for the Florida Bar. And that driving awareness around those membership to the students. How do they get involved? You've somewhat highlighted it, but Will, maybe you can give us a little bit more insight in really direct steps law students can take right now to either join that section or become a member or participate in some way.
So right now we're in the middle of launching a new website that should go up in the next month or two. So it's not particularly helpful for your question. I've posted my email address. If anyone wants to just email me, I'm happy to give them instructions. We're again trying to set up informally a mentorship program to connect students with practitioners in the area they're interested in. One of the enormous advantages of government practice is that there are a lot of areas of law that you just don't know exist. One of my good friends planned to be a federal prosecutor. Her father was a federal prosecutor, and now she does horse racing regulation. And that's just what happens. And a lot of these niche practice areas are hard to break into in private practice, but they're a lot easier to break into from the government side. And you can end up talking to practitioners and get within that network. And that might yield 2L summer opportunities or something like that. And that is really sort of the key within government practice is networking, because so much of hiring is based on people telling other people what positions are open. And so if anyone wants to get involved with the government, the Florida Government Bar Association, just send me an email and I can send you a bunch of instructions.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So now let's kind of get into the substantive nature of what you do and how COVID may have impacted that. But I really want you to kind of give insight to the students, if you can, of your day-to-day operations and what skills are really important from your day-to-day, what you can acquire in the short term, what you must have as a government lawyer in the short term as far as those skills, and what you can acquire over kind of a longer period of time. And then we'll shift into kind of the COVID conversation and how it may have disrupted your practice. Anybody want to start? Janine, I know that you've had disruption because I've watched it in the past 2 years at a very, very micro level.
Yes, and generally, for the skills that you mentioned, adaptability and flexibility, even before COVID, was a number one and number two skill to have as a local government attorney. I think you've heard this from me before, but I think the interviewing and counseling class is one of the best classes that you can take in law school, because most important in local government is your ability to interact with people in a diplomatic way. And so it teaches you active listening and how to ask the right questions, ask the right follow-up questions to get the information you need to be able to represent your client, which is generally the organization. I like to call the city of St. Pete Charlie. And then we had a city council member named Charlie, so I had to change it for a year. But in the best interest of your client, you need to make sure that you have all of the information. And sometimes that can be difficult in local government, to make sure that everybody is providing you all the information you need to do what it is you need to do. But on a daily basis, I need to have the ability to wear multiple hats. And most of the attorneys in my office have to be able to do that. We have a few attorneys that have a niche, right? We have a labor and employment attorney who gets the wonderful ability to focus on labor and employment, which is diverse within itself. But most of us are hybrids, where we may work on land use as well as real estate. Or if you're a litigation attorney, you're working on personal injury as well as constitutional law cases, as well as land use cases. So you have to be able to work in a diverse area of the law in local government typically, and be able to interact with persons as you navigate those issues. I don't know if you want to go into the COVID question, because I think I should probably hear from other people on the panel before I start to talk about COVID.
I'll return to you because I know it's extensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Christian, do you want to get some?
I'm laughing because literally as we're doing this, I have another judge in a murder trial and he's like asking me questions. So I would say the hardest skill that I've had to learn is really prioritizing on the fly. So, what might have been the most important thing I needed to do at 7:30 this morning is probably going to change by 9 o'clock. And how to kind of adjust expectations and communicate that. So because I'm in, somewhat of a unique position where I'm providing legal advices to judges, I remember when I was at RW1 and you get the memo where there's no cases on point. And I remember thinking, like, how often can that happen? All the time, actually, every day. There's an issue in front of me, there's no case on point, and it's my job to kind of mishmash cases together to be able to tell my judge, hey, you can do this or you can't do this because of this, even though I don't actually have something specifically saying that. So I think just becoming a more efficient writer and communicator has been, really the reason I've been successful at my job is because I'm able to do that now. Be able to communicate to my judges why I think something or don't think something. And that very well could be while I'm sitting next to them and there's attorneys at the bench and they're all looking at me thinking, why are you telling him what to do? You're not the judge. But yeah, I think just really concise, especially writing. So when you get an order from a judge, the worst case scenario for me would be if the attorneys have to file a motion to say, what did you just tell us to do? So I never want that to happen. So I think overall, just really researching and writing. So I'm giving good advice and then communicating that in the best way possible. And yes, COVID definitely impacted criminal courts, but we can research.
I'll circle back. It was a compound question. Yeah, I'll circle back to that. Will?
I think professionally, one of the hardest things for me is I went straight from undergrad to law school and then began practicing. And up until I began practicing, my entire life was, in class, and you had a right and wrong answer, and you needed to deliver it quickly. And one of the hardest things for me was learning to slow down, because I would have interactions where someone would ask me something, I'd sort of give them my gut reaction. And the next thing I knew, they'd be putting way too much weight on my answer there. And so a lot of the things you learn as a young attorney are sort of, you can say, let me go back and research that. Here's my initial reaction. But it's, you suddenly realize that the people asking you the questions don't know the answers. That's why they're asking you the question. And you need to be right.
So working at the Department of Agriculture and the Consumer Services, which is one of the states, it is the state's largest state agency. The majority of our division leaders are attorneys, our administration are attorneys, but they're working in a non-legal capacity, much like myself. So one of the tricks we have to always try and manage is to remind people that, yes, we are attorneys, but we're not your attorney. You need to go talk to the general counsel for that official opinion. I could give you guidance, but you have someone who is your actual attorney. And just because I am an attorney and does not mean that you should be asking me for a legal opinion at this moment. So that's a challenge that's been an interesting balancing act to try and explain to the people who aren't attorneys, who have in their mind the goal of what an attorney is. But the skill set, again, we're all in this capacity. It's going to echo what everyone's saying. It's the reading and the writing, the reading comprehension, the writing, so that we can write the opinions and the communications that people want. Our ability to speak. Stetson's making you an advocate, best advocacy. Well, one of the top advocacy schools in the nation. So we want to make sure that those skills that we're coming away with are what make people desire to hire you and put you in these government roles, so that you can talk and advocate on the issues that you're pushing forward, whether in a courtroom or just in the court of like public opinion.
So can we stay on you for just a little bit? Can you talk a little bit about the COVID disruption? I always find this a really very fascinating aspect of understanding how practice has shifted or changed in a very direct way because of COVID.
Well, again, so I think COVID shifted the world of government in a lot of ways. The way that I think we all impacted that we were all impacted, even outside of government, like everyone's life was impacted. We quit meeting in person, we quit meeting in public. All of our meetings moved to Zoom or some other capacity. I just spent the last week I was in charge of a international meeting that normally we would have tried to have coordinated so that we get people to meet together in Orlando from these different countries, but instead we did it via a different platform where we were meeting like this, like we are all meeting right now, via cameras and virtually. And when that situation, I think it was an improvement, because where it had been international brought here, it would have been a much smaller number of people. It would have been max 20, 25, 30 people. And we had over 300 participants who were able to join us via the Zoom. So we were able to increase that participation. But at the same time, you also saw a lot of, when Zoom happened, a lot of what we do in agriculture and advocate consumer services is going out in public and meeting with people and advocating and making sure people are aware of the different opportunities that we offer. And that is still just starting to come back into public, where we're going out and doing those type of things again. I'll give it over to Christian, because I know that the courtrooms, I have a lot of friends. I'm only out of Stetson a few years myself, so a lot of my friends are still, and I was at the public defender's office, so I know that the way that they've done things has been is very different. So yeah.
Yes, and really what's crazy is how much it varied circuit by circuit. So Hillsborough County, which is the 13th circuit, we have been fully everything back open since last June, but we went through quite a period where obviously we were not transporting defendants from the jail to the courthouse. We did not have any hearings in person. So I like to joke I had a nice stint as a constitutional law staff attorney, because I was now researching your constitutional right to be present for your trial, your constitutional right to plea in person in front of a judge, your constitutional right to face your accuser. Well, the Supreme Court cases pre-COVID were like, let's pause speedy trial for 3 days because of a hurricane. Talking about, there is nothing that says, well, what happens if we shut down for a global pandemic for 18 months? How does that impact your speedy trial rights? How does that impact the state's motion to continue that otherwise would essentially grant dismissal for a defendant's case? So there were so many moving parts. I think our private criminal bar probably prefers a lot of things to remain on Zoom, right? It's very easy for them. They don't have to go to the jail. The jail set up all these Zoom rooms to do more video calls. It's much easier for them to be in front of 6 judges at once, because they just pop in one judge's Zoom room, call the case, okay, pop in another Zoom room, versus they were previously literally running around the courthouse to do this. I think our public defenders were very ready and continue to prefer in person because it saves them a trip to the jail, but also it's the easiest face-to-face time for their client. So I think most of our judges now across the board, any substantive hearings, trials, otherwise problematic defendants that are not appearing on Zoom are coming in person, but we are still doing some kind of minor disposition status type hearings on Zoom. I think that will probably stay that way, because I know, at least in Hillsborough County, the jail likes it very much, because they don't have to pre-COVID, they were physically transporting all these people in a van from the jail, which is at Falkenberg Road, about 20 minutes away, to the courthouse, moving them all up and down all of our floors, and then getting them back to the jail. So the jail has definitely pushed for a lot of this to remain on Zoom. So I think we'll probably see some of that stay, but definitely not to the extent. During the height of COVID, we were literally doing everything on Zoom. I mean, we were doing trials, we were doing major hearings, pleas, everything was done virtually. And we're really, it feels like more recently fully back. Anyone that wants to come back in could come back in. But there were plenty of constitutional issues that we dealt with, and frankly are just now getting opinions from the second DCA and the Florida Supreme Court. And I don't know that they're going to tell us we were right. So we're going to see how that pans out here in the next probably year or so.
Janine, I know that you equally, I remember this, the week that we all went on lockdown, your office was inundated. And so I don't know if you can give some insight.
Nutshell version, because that could be like a whole hour within itself for the city, because you're navigating acting externally, right? For all of the rules and regulations for the community, you're navigating internally as to what you want to do with your employees and those visitors to your site, if certain sites are open, and some had to remain open. And then you're a human being, right? So you're navigating your family and your 17-year-old being homeschooled. And I had a 20-year-old in France in March of 2020, and I'm trying to get her back home and working through Georgia Tech. So I think with COVID-19, you can't leave either one of those at home, right? You're a person, so you're working in all fronts. That's number one. And then number two, we had a lot of preemption happening immediately as far as cities and counties were concerned as to what we could and could not do. I was very grateful that for a while we were allowed to have virtual meetings, and there's a lot that goes into that, but we can only have virtual meetings for as long as the governor says we can have virtual meetings. And so at a point, the governor said no more virtual meetings, but we still had council members and board and committee members who were not comfortable coming to City Hall. And so a lot of board meetings just didn't happen for months at a time because we couldn't have a quorum for those, board meetings of the Development Review Commission, most of the land use type boards, the Community Planning and Preservation Commission. These are all boards and committees that as lawyers, we advise on the work that they do. And those people were not comfortable coming in 2020. And so a lot of those months went kind of silent. Meanwhile, it's kind of a phew that those boards aren't meeting, because you're navigating whether or not you want to mandate testing for employees, whether or not you want to mandate masks for everyone who enters the building once you open, and whether or not you want to mandate whether or not businesses must do certain things, and navigating the preemption around that. So yes, that COVID impacted us a lot, but I will say, there were some positives that came out of the situation. No one wants to downplay, the devastation that came with COVID and the loss of life. But for government, technology, at least I'll just speak to mine, was at the bottom of the list. Okay, I'm getting a lot of head nods from the other panelists. So technology was at the bottom of the list. And I should have apologized for my unstable internet connection today, because of all of that, we are building new infrastructure. And so while they're doing it, it's in and out sometimes. So I apologize for that, but it's coming, right? So it's going to be better once they finish. We were forced into technology, just like the courts, just like the state and everybody else. But now we are utilizing that to one, speak with other local governments. And that's something I'll say to law students. If you're going to enter this work, if you're an introvert, you're gonna have to work on that, because you will need to talk to other people, in Orlando, in Tallahassee, in Miami, because we're all in this together as far as what we can do as a local government. And so the one thing you may want to work on, another skill set, I'd say to work on, is being able to open up and talk to people, be a sharer. We have to share in local government on our policies and procedures, and so that we can effectively represent the citizens of St. Pete as well as the entity.
So this is a mantra we hear all the time, and kind of a rumor that's out there, and I'd love to hear your insight on this, is that in order to get hired by any type of government or local government entity, it's a lateral hire. So you have to essentially get your experience first. They really are looking for attorneys with experience, and that right out of law school, you don't necessarily are able to penetrate the market. So is your specific job one that you can see newer graduates actually get into that role? And if so, what should they be doing? What should they be thinking about? Or is there entry right after graduation into areas that you think can then create a pathway?
I can speak for my office specifically. We often hire people right out of law school. I was hired before I had bar results. You just have to pass the bar within 1 year. I would say, really, with any clerk type of job, I think the best experience you can have applying is clerk type experience. So whether that be a judicial internship at the state level or federal level, anytime you can have a judge speak on your behalf is going to be a huge advantage in a job like mine, because they really trust each other's opinions. So if you have a judge calling on behalf of you, that's going to really is irreplaceable when you're applying to a job like mine.
Thanks. Will, I know that I don't want to gain your voice here. I know that you entered right after law school, but do you see positions that are open and available?
I think especially now in this hiring economy that is basically going gangbusters, at least state government is desperate to hire anyone anywhere. I don't think as an informal hearing officer, basically tasked with creating the process, no, someone couldn't be hired into my spot because it was created for me for this spot. But literally every position I've ever held elsewhere in state government, they had entry-level attorneys getting hired into comparable positions. And that the key thing is that it depends on what area. I'm sure local government seems to prefer prefer people with more local government experience, and the university system does the same thing, where if you look at the GC offices of the state university system, you see laterals. But with state government right now, with our hiring challenges, I think state government is eager to hire people right out of school. Now, the federal government, I think, only hires through the honors program right out of law school. I never could really track that down because they shut that down my year.
Yeah, thanks for that. That helps dispel the myth. So thank you. And Alan, I don't know if you can give any insight into that as well, or Janine.
I would just say that if you, because you asked earlier, a lot of us like sort of fall into what we're doing, but there are plenty of people out there I know who know, like I knew I was going to work in government. I knew it was very likely that I'd end up working in government and public service one way or the other after law school. So I did, I interned both at the public defender's office and I did my internship with the federal government. I think that if you want to get that experience to help get you competitive and to help get meet people, because also government's not different than any other capacity of work. It's not quite so, it's not always cronyism as it is in the private sector. But if you know somebody, that insight, that people who can help you, tell you, give you tips and advice on how to interview or what the experience was like, that helps. If you've interned with them or volunteered with them, that gives you the insight to know how to better shape the experience you want to do. My internship between my 1L and my 2L year in DC was one that I worked with Stetson to create. I used my network of people to then build my own internship, which Stetson offers as a possibility. And if you know people who work in government, or if you know you want to do this ideal, like your dream job would be working here, take the opportunity now to, if it's not in the Tampa Bay area, maybe look at the summer sessions to see about creating an internship someplace you would like to work, and reaching out to those people saying, what is your internship procedures, finding out what it is, and working with them to apply and get accepted to their internship program, and then working with Stetson to make that happen. And that's an extra step a foot in the door that might help you get that job right out of law school.
Thank you. Janine, I don't know if you have
I
any
would-
insights.
I can a little bit echo what Alan was saying, and also utilize social media. You'd be amazed at what even a cold reach out on LinkedIn could lead to, not only a relationship, but a job. My sister is not a lawyer, but her most recent job came out of a reach out on LinkedIn, and it was really quick. Within 3 months, she was moving to Knoxville, Tennessee. And especially in local government, for those of us who are on LinkedIn, I think that's an easy way to reach out if you don't want to actually make a phone call or something like that. We do hire entry-level attorneys. We particularly hire people from our clinic. So if you're interested in local government, the local government clinic, which I teach, is something that you can sign up for. But I mean, state attorney clinic, PD clinic, they hire from that bunch all the time. And there's lots of other clinics where people do direct hiring, because it's a pool of people who you've met, who you've worked with, their work product. So it's kind of an easy hire. When I came out of law school 20 years ago, local government work wasn't available to entry-level attorneys generally. But the one thing I want to say to you about that, whether it's local government or any other type of law that you're interested in, if it says 1 to 2 years of experience and isn't really specific about what that experience has to be, then go for it, because that's what it said for this job that I'm in right now 20 years ago, 1 to 3 years of experience. And I said, okay, well, I had 2 clinics in law school, that's experience. And when you add all that up, it's 1 year. And I was interviewed and I got the job. So if it doesn't quite say entry level, but you have some experience related to that, I'd say go for it. And if, let them tell you no. That's always been my father's mantra. Let them tell you no. So I would say go for it. And then maybe you'll see some success in that area.
Perfect. That really capitalizes on the trends that we're hearing and dispels the myth of you have to be a lateral, right? Gaining your experience in law school. And thank you everybody for your insight of what experiences actually have been meaningful to secure that level of employment. Okay, so I want to shift a little bit and kind of end. We have about 15 minutes left, maybe a little bit less, and really talk about the joys, right? I mean, I started this off and I started the conversation with, you're unsung heroes. You're doing incredible work to uphold our government and the pillars of our democracy. And I'd love to hear kind of how it has rewarded you and the joys. There's equally challenges, so we'd love to hear about those challenges, but either one of those or both of those, if you can give us some thoughts. Will, can we start with you?
Sure. Probably, at least from my experience with state government, the joy of government service has mostly been that you actually will see the practical effect of what you're doing. He drafted a data breach bill that became law, and it's still discussed with data breach stuff today. I could see the practical implications of what I was doing with the Deepwater Horizon litigation, or when I was at the Department of Transportation and we were having disputes about land planning and management. I don't think if you end up in just traditional law like insurance defense or big law positions that you really see that hands-on I guess practical implications of what you're doing, because so much of it is a clients in different areas, or it's impacting one person rather than the entire community. And I think it's just incredibly rewarding when you're driving around downtown and you think, oh, I really helped make that happen.
Excellent.
And I see Shelby asked, looking at your coworkers and yourselves, how do you think burnout is in your field compared to other types of law? So, I think the reality, I love my work. I very much echo what William says. It's almost sometimes like a weird out of body experience when I'm sitting at a judge's desk right now, because I've worked with him for so long. I felt comfortable asking him to use his bench to make this call. I do very much enjoy the work, but I think, really on a practical day to day as well, the work-life balance really can't be beat. I have a 3-year-old at home, and I can, for the most part, commit to picking her up from school every day. And that's not a big ask or a big deal. And I take vacations with my family, and, there's never this billable hour, requirement hanging over my head. And, it really makes everything outside of work more enjoyable. So I feel like the burnout is quite low. I know internally in my office, so you can choose kind of your practice area, whether you want to do criminal, civil, family, probate, or what other thing I'm forgetting. We definitely have attorneys that like to kind of move around just because they want a different topic. But actual burnout, like when I've talked to friends that are typically with big law and they're working Monday through Saturday and then a half day on Sunday, yeah, we're not experiencing that same kind of burnout. So I happily take my vacations every year without guilt.
Alan?
Same. I saw the same question come in. I have I think I've been out of law school now 4 years, and I have friends who I have watched who complain every day about their jobs and who have quit and switched and tried to find things that make them happier. And those friends of mine who are working in government and government law don't have the same complaints. You might get complaints about salary, especially when you're trying to keep up with the big law people. But but as far as life goals and things go, this is a pleasant experience. And I do echo the things that we do. You can see an impact from what we directly impact in helping write the laws, craft the law, interpret the law. Like we're the ones who are make it so that things can happen as a general rule. So I think there was really a question of offense or defense. It's going to be a little bit of both. That's just the way the world works. But some of that is like making sure that and Janine can probably talk about it a little bit more with the city of St. Pete. Writing one of my best friends is a lawyer there, and he delights every day in trying to craft laws to make things better. So that I know he works a lot on First Amendment issues and some of the things going on with the St. Pete Pier, and he is delighted to try and just meet the challenge of making something that meets the constitutional requirements and still serves the city and makes it a safe space. And like it's just fascinating the things that we can get done and the rewarding behavior that comes out of that. So yeah, the reward. Yeah.
Thank you. And Janine, if you want to
Definitely, and I hope it doesn't go out again. The offensive defense question, I did want to address that as well, because I prefer to play offense. A lot of attorneys in my office will hear me talk about preventive law all the time to make sure we're not on the defense for litigation or things like that. But my husband always says defense wins championships. So it's a little bit of both. Like Alan says, you have to be ready you want to craft on the offense, you want to craft it so that once you get to be on the defense, you have the best defensible policy, procedure, case, whatever it is, you want to make sure that you structure it in a way that once you are on the defense, that it's a little bit easier to do that. As far as what Alan was saying with the city of St. Petersburg, I think a lot of it is problem solving, right? That's another skill, problem solving skills. If you have children, have them do puzzles, have them do logic questions, have them do all of that, because we are looking for innovative ways, even as lawyers working on laws and policies, to make sure that what our client wants, the mayor, the city council, the citizens of St. Pete, can fit into the laws that already exist federally or on a state level, or whatever regulations are before us. So if we are not just thinking that it's black and white, but look at the gray and the shades of gray. I don't want to talk about that, right? But anyway, if we're looking at what we can do outside of the box, inside the box, along the lines of the box to get the work done, we're going to have a better time of it than looking at it as a black or white type of situation.
And just echoing what Janine said, I think if COVID taught us anything, the answer, well, we've never done it this way before, really is not acceptable anymore. We have not done the majority of what we've done in the last, 2 years. So I do think it really encouraged older lawyers to be more open and apt to problem solve with unique mechanisms that we hadn't had before. I mean, I can assure you that 99% of the judiciary did not know what Zoom was in March of 2020. And now they have it on their phone. And of course we do Zoom. So, I do think it really has encouraged, especially younger government lawyers and their offices, to speak up and say, hey, well, here's a new way we could do this, or this is a problem I'm seeing and this is how I think we can solve it. So, you want to try to find some silver linings of COVID. I do think that's probably one of them.
So we can't thank you enough. And I do see students raising their hands. Ben, I think your hand is raised. We're going to switch now to the student Q&A session before we close it out. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you to everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate it. This is a great experience for us to actually talk to practitioners. I guess my question is for Ms. Williams. What's the biggest problem that you think as a city attorney that cities and municipalities face?
Oh, wow. You asked for one, so I'm going to give you one, but there's several. But right now here in the city of St. Petersburg, it's affordable housing and rent control. Every city council meeting, we have several citizens come to us about what's happening in the city and the community. You've got people who've been working with $800 rents who are now being asked to pay $1,600 within a few months. And it's not sustainable. We're seeing our homeless population increase, and it had been decreasing for the past few years up until the situation. So the mayor, the city council, our office, we're all looking at ways to be able to address that within, again, keep saying preemption, but within the confines that are given to us as a city by the state. So there's certain things that we can and cannot do, and sometimes citizens don't understand that. And that's a skill you learn as a lawyer to navigate those situations as well, to be able to explain in layman's terms, which is difficult sometimes, to citizens and even employees for your government as to why they're not able to do something or have to do it within a different way. And that's the last thing I'll say about this is, it's like Christian said, it's not the no. There's no. You really can't say no anymore unless it's like clearly illegal. You can't do it that way, but let me tell you how you could do it. So that is the skill that you'll have to learn, and that comes with research and problem solving.
I don't see any other hands up, and I think we've answered all the questions in the chat, but I would encourage the students to engage in any other questions that you may have.
I think there was one question to the chat regarding public service loan forgiveness. And that's a process that just requires you to make 120 qualifying payments. And qualifying payments is defined as on an income-driven repayment program. And basically, you can wait till you've made 120 payments and then apply, but the preferred method is every year you certify your type of employment by submitting that to the Department of Education or your loan servicer, and they will have a running tally of how many qualifying payments you've made. And so there's no real process of getting into it. It's really a process of getting out of it, because as long as you're working for a qualifying employer on a qualifying plan, you don't really have to do anything until you apply for forgiveness. Although, again, that's not best practices.
Yeah, no, thanks, Will, for pointing that out. I just put in the chat kind of the links to all of the explanation, as well as I think there's great videos by the Equal Justice Works. They've really kind of targeted this to explain this to students, and Alan has equally broadcasted that it's happening. I can report to everyone that my loans were forgiven. I don't know if you felt the same thing this year.
Yeah, I was going to say my loan should be forgiven next month. So
fantastic. Yeah. Congrats. Any other questions out there? We have about 2 minutes left before we really have to shut it down, because I know many of you have to go to your next classes. I just want to give some space to any students who may have a question. I'm not seeing any. So I do this all the time to end my classes. If you were to say one word, one quick sentence and a quiet reflection of what you would give or what advice you'd give to students right now while they're at the end of the semester and their spring semester, we're feeling the stress on campus, what advice would you give to them?
Your first job, you'll never think about this moment again.
That's great.
For whatever comfort that gives you, it's so exciting once you really get into a practice area you love. So hopefully you can just kind of view that as a light at the end of the tunnel.
I'd say recognize your worth. You are equipped by Stetson to be a lawyer. You have a skill set, you have many skill sets, and don't be afraid to apply that. You come with technology, knowledge, and other types of knowledge that many of us don't have. So recognize your worth when you step into that space and live it out loud.
Anybody else?
When you begin practicing, you're going to feel like an imposter and assume that the older attorneys around you know what they're talking about, and they probably don't.
Alan, close us out.
Enjoy your time at Stetson. Like I said, I've been out for 4 years, and I look back on it as very, very fondly. So don't let the stress of the finals get you down. They will pass, and then you will get to enjoy the time with your friends and figure out the best classes to take, and just really enjoy the experience. Make the most of it. Try and study abroad once they let you do that again.
We're there this summer.
Hey.
Thanks everybody for sharing space. We are super thankful. And again, to the students as well, this is your space. And so we hope that you've enjoyed this kind of panel and engagement. Feel free to reach out. The chat is full of contact information. Thanks everybody.